In this video, we're going to be tying a little baitfish fly called the surf candy. First thing we're going to do is start with some clear monofilament thread. And we're just going to lay down a quick thread base. We'll basically give ourselves something for the glue and the fibers to bind to. This is a great little fly for stripers and little tunas on the East Coast. Also works well for salmon as well. Basically anything that'll eat a sardine or a glass minnow. It's a good fly for any species that'll eat those. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start with some white Slinky fiber. You can also use super hair. Both are very similar materials. We're going to tie this right on top of the shank here just to start. We'll get it started with a few wraps of thread. Then we can just take that whole bundle and just twist it so that it lays on the underside of the hook. You can tie it on the underside if you want to start there. I find it usually a little easier just to tie it on top and then twist it. And once you've got it on the underside, you can just lay down a few more wraps to make sure that it's secure. Then I pull the hook off the vise and just work the material through the point of the hook so that it sits evenly on each side of the fly. Now we're ready for a little bit of flash, and you got to be careful not to overdo it with the flash. You only want to use about 4 or 5 strands of Flashabou for this fly. Any more and it can overpower the fly. And we'll just tie those also right on top of the shank of the hook. And just let them hang right off the back. Next material that we're going to use is some Chartreuse Slinky fiber. This fly can be tied in a lot of different colors. Most popular colors are probably the olives, chartreuse, and the browns, but you can do whatever you want. I've seen them tied in pink as well. It's another good color, especially for salmon. And we're going to tie the chartreuse color again just right on top of the shank of the hook. This will be the kind of the top portion of the fly, and also where all the color is. And I just make sure it's nice and secure. I just build a real slight tapered head there. And you want to make sure all these fibers are all picked out and they're nice and even. Along the sides of the hook. Sometimes you'll get a wild little fiber in there and you got to kind of force them to cooperate with you. There we go. You can whip finish. Then you can attach your eyes, and you can use a little bit of super glue to kind of help you get the eyes to set where you want them. We want our eyes to be on each side of the fly here, up near the head. I'm just going to be using a little 5mm living eye. And I just kind of roughly slide them into place. There we go. And that little bit of super glue I put on there should be just enough to hold them in place for our fly finish. So the next step is to take a little bit of fly finish. This is just going to be our first coat. So you don't really want to go crazy at this point. We're just going to take a little bit of fly finish and lay it on top of the fly, and I make sure to pull on the entire clump here as I apply it. That'll make the clump a little bit thinner and also allow me to work in the fly finish. The idea at this point is just to work the fly finish all the way through the fibers so that we reach the shank of the hook. We don't really necessarily want to build up the fly at this point. We just want to make sure that we got the whole thing coated and glued together. And once you get kind of the rough body taper figured out here, you can take your Slinky fiber, and the more you pull on it, kind of the slimmer the profile you get. So you can kind of pull and kind of get an idea for the profile. If you pull hard, you'll get thin. If you let go, it'll get thicker. So this fly I'm going to tie today, it'll be a little bit thinner profile. You want to make sure your eyes are exactly where you want them before you continue. Then you can zap the fly finish in place. Then you can trim your body. I just give it a rough trim at this point. Trim it long, but just kind of give it a rough trim. Then you can build up a little bit more of a head on this fly. You can also use epoxy for this. I find that the fly finish or the UV resins cure much faster, a lot easier to work with, but it's personal preference. I know some guys that are partial to epoxy. If you have a little bit of tackiness with your fly finish, there are a few tricks to getting rid of that. You can bake them in the sun, bake your flies in the sun. You can also use a little bit of alcohol, rubbing alcohol on like a little rag. You can rub that on the surface after it's cured, and that'll really help get rid of some of that tackiness. So you just kind of build out the rough shape of what you want on the fly. You got to kind of work fast or have a rotary vise. I'm using a Regal vise, and I just straighten the jaws out so I can kind of use them as a rotary head. The idea here is you can turn and add glue as you go. That way it doesn't bulge or sag in areas that you don't want it to. And then you have your head built. That's essentially the finished fly. You can shape it more from here if you want. Some guys will actually take a little more glue, kind of do what I'm doing here, where they'll add a belly to the fly and they'll actually let it sag a little bit. It's a little bit harder to do, takes a little bit more work. They actually will deliberately sag the body, kind of giving it that baitfishy profile that I have going on here. You can do this in layers if you're not too familiar with doing it. There we go, and then you got to work quick. And you can further shape it from there. There we go. Then you can let that sit out in the sun to cure. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to taper the tail portion of the fly. Basically just trim the fibers so that they taper back. just like so. That is your finished surf candy. Great little fly for the little tunas and anything that'll basically eat a little glass minnow or small bait fish. Pretty simple to tie. Takes a little getting used to working with those resins, but not many materials to the fly. Pretty straightforward and simple to tie. You can find all the materials that we used on this fly on our website, intheriffle.com.